another mentoring workshop. Mr. Felton's done a fantastic job of arranging different individuals every month to come and speak to you. And I think we got another outstanding one today, Mr. Robert Rice. He is from Wilmington, North Carolina. He says he's lived his whole life there. And he's a businessman as well. Sells insurance. Is that right? That's right. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Rice and ask questions as you go along. And feel free to, I think you got a lot of good information to share with you. Thank you for taking time to come.
Well, I'm glad to have the opportunity to come and speak with you all today. Mr. Felton drug me in here. Tricked me. And I'm Robert Rice. You remember Uncle Ben's Rice, you can remember me.
Thank you.
And I'm an insurance man. 34 years of it.
Wow.
So I've had a lot of experience dealing with a lot of different kinds of people over those years. And I've had the opportunity to see, because of my diversity in the life insurance business, I've worked from the wealthy to the poor, and I've seen how education has affected different people's lives. And I see the importance of it. And obviously, it's something that's important to y'all, or you wouldn't be sitting here today. I have a degree in business from Mount Olive College, which I obtained later in life, because my first years in college, I went to Atlantic Christian, which is Barton, and Mitchell College up in the mountains. I started in a community college. And I transferred over to Atlantic Christian, well, it's Barton now. But at that time, I really didn't have my priorities right. And I was more interested in chasing girls and having a good time, and I didn't finish at the time.
Well, that was a good thing then.
Right. So, and I regretted that. So the opportunity came along later in life, probably it's been about 12, 15 years ago, that Mount Olive College had these courses where you could do it accelerated to get your degree. And I went back in there, and it was extremely difficult. In an 18-month period of time, I did 18 credit hours. I had to retake biology, all these different courses, as well as the accelerated courses online. Basically gave up my life because I had to continue to work and do this at the same time. But I saw the importance of it. We had to do a project thesis, which is a graduate requirement if you go and get a graduate degree. We did it in the undergraduate, which is, mine was 30 pages, and it's sitting in the library at Mount Olive College. And I obtained my degree in business and BS in marketing and business administration, and there's another little term that goes along with a long spelled degree. And I graduated magna cum laude, straight A's. I mean, it was because I knew the importance of it, but it took a lot of dedication and a lot of giving up and a lot of hard work to do it. But I felt real good when I completed it. And what I've seen out there, it's so important to have an education today because the work environment is so competitive. Not only is it competitive within the United States, but we're having to compete with the rest of the world. And that's why if we're going to maintain our standard of living, we have to, people in this country have to be educated in order to compete. These other countries, they're coming to our universities and outperforming us, and then they're going back, which I think is wrong. We need to try to keep some of those people here, but we need to inspire people in this country to try to achieve and do better. If not, we're going to fall to the wayside, and we already are. We're being beat out by a lot of different countries. So it's something it's not only important to you individually in your life, but it's also important to our whole way of life. And that's why emphasis needs to be put on education and continue in that direction. Now, it's changed dramatically too. I'm 57 years old, and back in my day, I mean, it was 4-year liberal arts. People, you got out of high school, you went to college. But today, we're finding that jobs that we have become obsolete overnight. People are having to go back to school. People want to improve themselves. We're having to learn new skills. I mean, just think how far cell phones have come. These smartphones. What do we do without these things nowadays? You know, I've got instant knowledge immediately on anything I want just by talking to my phone. I mean, it's amazing. So we have to think ahead. We live in such a rapidly changing time. If I'm young and I'm looking at education, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? You know, that's the hard thing. It's hard to decide, what am I going to do with my life? Now, especially when I'm young, that's the time to take the sacrifice. Now, in this community college set, we've got people at all ages. But my mom's 81 years old. She teaches dancing. She teaches line dancing. I mean, what's young? She's still young at heart. But when especially, like, I have a son who's 22, and I'm working on him as hard as I can to get him to understand, and young people to understand, that the sacrifice up front, to put that sacrifice in up front for 3, 4, 6 years up front and work hard will make the rest of your life a lot easier. If you don't, the rest of your life you'll be sacrificing and struggling and everything else. So, you know, that's why you just have to somehow see that work hard up front will make it a whole lot easier for you down the road, and it has for me. And then we look at education. You know, there's a big debate going on now between liberal arts education or just specializing in a particular field. Now, if I can afford it, which is hard for a lot of people, but there's so many resources out there available today to help us to get through school, to help pay for these courses, grants, and all these things. And you really need to sit down with financial aid officers and try to work out a strategy to pay for these things. You may have to work part-time. Maybe you can't go to school full-time, but still work and set a goal and work in that direction to get what you're going to try to achieve. And then you got to look real close at, what am I going to do? You know, I've got to think, if I'm going to put all this effort into something, I want it to be something that's going to be viable for the future. Am I going to be able to have a job in this down the road? You know, so many people go into school and they'll just go take these courses and they'll get these degrees, and they're not worth 2 cents really as far as getting a job out there. You know, you've got to look at what's prevalent in society today, that where I can make money. Money's not everything, but it sure relieves a lot of stress sometimes. You know, I've met a lot of wealthy people who are miserable, to be truthful. But, you know, you don't want to be struggling. It breaks up marriages. You want to be an example for children if you have them, and try to encourage them. And I do like liberal arts in a way, because I think the liberal arts are a 4-year degree. If a person can do that, makes them a more well-rounded individual. I can remember back saying, well, why have I got to take this English course, or this literature course, or history, or biology, or all these things? But all these things come into play later in life, especially in the insurance business. I have to deal with people. People are so different. So what I learned in psychology has helped me in that aspect. You know, math and all these things, I have to use math all the time. So that's important. English, being able to communicate with people. Then you have your like humanities. You say, well, what do I need to know about this art or this architecture or this or whatever? It just makes you a more well-rounded person, able to adapt to changing situations, because you have a more open mind. It makes you a better citizen. You're more informed about what's going on in the political world. So many people I meet, I hear all these statements, but if you ask them, well, what's the 3 branches of government? They can't even tell you. You know, but they know how to run the country. You know. So, I mean, ignorance is out there everywhere. Education helps get you out of that perpetual ignorance that just continues to go on that I see all the time. So I think if you, the more you can learn, the better. And don't, even though you think this course doesn't relate to what you're doing, the English or the literature or whatever, they will help you become a more well-rounded person and to be able to be, the better citizen. What I've seen in working with people out there, people with education make more money. They're able to get better jobs. They're better citizens. They have, seems like, happier families. So I think it's something that's very important for us to do. My little story, it's been a struggle. Life is always a struggle. But you have to go forth every day and try to improve yourself. Try to learn. You never stop learning. I mean, this is a learning experience for me right here today. I've been thinking about this for 2 months. Was I going to write down all these notes? Was I going to do this? I'm just flying out by the seat of my pants right now. And he said, well, how long have I got to speak here? What am I going to talk about? And I'm thinking that right now. What am I going to talk about? Education has given me the ability to do the job that I do now. So many things that you go into today, they expect you to have an education. You can't even get in the door without it. And every door that you open opens other doors. So don't ever stop learning, and I think that's important. Basically, y'all are all in here different ages and different. Now the other thing, we look at specializing in things today. Well, that's important too. If you can't go the liberal arts way, and which is a good way to go if you can afford it, specializing in something is very important. What are the fields that are out there? That's what you got to look at. You got to do a business plan on what you're trying to accomplish. We used to, in business, they use the SWOT formula: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So if I'm in education, I'm trying to think, well, what do I want to do? What I can do is sit down and take a couple of things that I think, well, this is what I'd like to do. And then put that formula to it. What are the strengths? I want to be a swine manager. I heard that's one of the courses that's offered out here. Or I want to go into nursing or whatever. Well, I can sit down and I can take a piece of yellow pad and I can put the SWOT formula, SWOT. All right, what are the strengths of what I want to do? And I write down, if it's nursing, I write down all the things about that. If it's opportunities, what are my opportunities? What are the weaknesses? Like, how am I going to pay for it? Where am I going to find the time? Or if I go into a particular field, what are the threats? Will this job even be around later on? Is the marketplace changing? So I have to analyze what I'm trying to do, and it's a good idea to sit down and really think it through. A lot of times people just don't think it through. They just go into it blindly, not trying to look ahead to see what there's going to be accomplished out of that. So, does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask me, or any thoughts that we can talk about?
One question.
Yeah.
What inspired you to go in your chosen field? Did you have a mentor?
Well, it's kind of funny that you said that. My stepfather said I was a big BSer, and I'd probably be good at But what I liked about the insurance was I liked being in control of my own destiny. Now, not everybody can do this type of job. And I have a lot of people say, well, I'm not a salesman. Everybody's a salesman. You have to sell yourself every day. You have to sell yourself to your family, your significant other, your children, your boss, your people who work for you. Everybody is a salesman. Don't ever think that you're not. You know, so, I hear that all the time from people, well, I couldn't do that, I want to be a salesman. Well, the insurance business is broad. I mean, you've got all kinds of insurance, and the definition of an insurance is basically a transfer of a risk for money. So what you do when you sell insurance is you have this risk. My house is going to burn down. I'm going to get in a car wreck. My health's going to go bad. I'm going to die and leave my family without any money. I've got a business partner. What if this business partner dies and all of a sudden I'm in business with his ex-wife? What am I going to do? How am I going to solve that? There's a lot of situations out there where there's risk, and that's what insurance does, is it takes that risk away for a premium. That's the definition of insurance. And in life insurance, there's a lot of different things that you look at. I mean, basically, you look at insurance as, well, I have a family and I'm going to die and my income's going to go away and I want to make sure my family's taken care of. I want to make sure that my house is going to be paid for, my spouse and children are going to have a place to live. I mean, that's basic. Or if I die, a lot of times people die, they have zero assets or whatever, and then their family's faced with it. Well, here, this funeral's going to cost me, you know, $10,000. Where's the money going to come from? So insurance is there to take that away. I mean, you use insurance in business. Like I was saying before, like a buy-sell agreement. These are things that I've learned. I've continued to educate myself in the insurance business. But let's say I'm in business with someone and that person dies and we have, our business is worth $500,000. Okay? Automatically, if I don't have an agreement, that's going to pass to the spouse. And let's say that spouse is, whoever it is an incompetent person or whatever, and all of a sudden they're in business with you because they inherited half that business. Well, what you do is you go get a legal document that says, it's called a buy-sell agreement, that simply says, if my partner dies in this business, I have the first right to buy that share of the business. It's a legal document drawn up by an attorney. Well, then how am I going to get the money to pay for it? This business is worth $500,000. I've got to come up with $250,000 in cash to pay to buy out that share of the business when my partner dies from his spouse. Well, that's where life insurance comes in. We have life insurance policies on each other to fund the buy-sell agreement. So if my partner dies, then I have the money to be able to buy him out. And the spouse might not have even wanted to be in the business, knew nothing about the business, so they're fairly compensated. They get their money. They're out of the business, and then I've got control of the business. So that's one way insurance is used. Or we hear about these people who own big farms and big businesses or whatever. And all their assets are tied up in this land or in their business. Well, there's the thing called federal estate taxes. And what federal estate taxes are is when a generation, a husband and wife die, and those assets pass to the next generation, that's when federal estate taxes come in. Well, so many people have been caught in that scenario where they wind up, and the federal estate tax had to be paid in 90 days when both die, the husband and wife, both die, and it goes to the next generation. All right, let's say I have a $10 million worth of land and farm and a business that's worth that much, and I've got to come up with $3 million to pay the federal estate taxes within 90 days of the second to die. Where's the money going to come from? You know, it's all tied up in property. It's all tied up in land or an ongoing business. I don't have that cash in order to pay for it. So what we do is we go to an attorney, we draw up an estate plan, and we provide that money through insurance in order to pay the federal estate taxes. So that way the business can continue to go. Otherwise, you'd be forced to sell the business. Well, there's vultures out there sitting around waiting for something like that. And then you wind up selling it at a loss or an ongoing business, and you hear about people losing businesses because of federal estate taxes. But it's a very simple solution if you do estate planning in order to set that up to prevent that from happening. So there's a lot of different ways life insurance is used in the marketplace to help protect families and assets and businesses and those types of things. And I've worked in those areas and I've enjoyed doing that. And that's very involved and it takes a long time. You might work on a case for a year. But I've made right much money doing that. I know one gentleman in Wilmington, I saw him make $260,000 on one case like that in commission. So that's a pretty good chunk of money. So the insurance business is a wide open business out there for people. If you have to have a lot of patience, you have to be able to handle rejection, and you have to be a self-motivator. But a lot of what we're looking at today is being self-motivated entrepreneurship. That's a big thing that's taking place in this country because we've seen manufacturing go overseas. A lot of traditional jobs that were there before aren't there now. So a lot of people are looking at becoming their own business person. They're an entrepreneur. Well, that takes education. Again, that's where you've got to have a broad education. But you've got to understand accounting. You've got to understand all the different marketing, all the different aspects that go along with that. That's why you want to try to take as many different things as you can to make yourself a more rounded person. And that's where what I was talking about, the liberal arts education still is very viable in society because it enables you to be that kind of person, to have an understanding of all the different facets. It's just not a one little focused thing that you're dealing with there. What I'm doing now is a lot more simple. I've kind of calmed down a little bit in my sales career. I've worked a long time. You build up these lifetime renewals where you get paid for, as long as these people keep these insurance policies, you get paid a percentage of it. So I built that up over a period of time, and that's helped me tremendously. What I'm doing now is I'm working more in the lower income area, and I'm helping people just to make sure that funeral planning. So many people die and they don't have any plans in place. And anytime you have a plan, things are going to work smooth. So that's what I help people do is today I'm making sure that they have enough insurance to take care of final expenses if they die. And I'm having them become a member of a society that allows them to pre-plan everything in advance through documents. It's free of charge if you have the insurance with us, and so you plan exactly what you want in the event of death as far as a funeral goes, and then you have this assistance of Funeral Consumer Guardian Society because you fill out paperwork, you mail it to them, you got membership cards. In the event of death, the family simply calls, they take out your rent plan, and they're going to assist them through the process. They'll negotiate with the funeral homes for them, up to 3 of them, to try to get the costs down as much as possible. And normally they'll save about $1,800 on these. Because the funerals are real expensive, and there's so many people out there that get caught and they die and their families don't have anything. So that's what I'm helping people do today, and I get a lot of satisfaction with helping people do this. So, but it's all, you have to be flexible and changing too, like in the insurance business, the marketplace is constantly changing. And you have to adapt and change right along with it. So, what else can I talk about? You got any other questions over there?
And y'all have any questions, feel free to ask some questions. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on, on what happens, since you're in the business of helping people when someone died.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can elaborate more on procedure that you all go through, the process when someone died, and you all come in and assist the family. Maybe somebody they may be inspired to.
Well, that's what the pre-planning was. you know, it's easy to get taken advantage of out there. And when you lose somebody that you're close to, your mom, a child, or whatever, you're stressed out, and most funerals or whatever are gonna take place in 3 or 4 days after someone dies. So by having it all planned in advance, it saves arguments within the family. You'd be surprised siblings will get in there and argue about what they're gonna do if somebody dies in the funeral home. And you're stressed out, it's easy to get taken advantage of. Insurance, the funeral business is a very highly profitable business, and there's a lot of good funeral directors out there, but a lot of them have gone to big corporate funeral homes, and they're trying to get as much money as they can out of a person, especially on caskets. They'll take a casket, they'll get it from the factory and mark them up 3 or 4 times what they paid for them. So what Funeral Consumer Guardian Society does, you make that call, they take that written plan as to how you want things, and they're going to go and negotiate with the funeral homes. And they'll tell the funeral homes, no, we're not going to, you're not going to charge them that much. We know what this costs, and we're not going to allow more than 100% markup on this. If they can't get them to do it, they'll actually have that same casket brought in from a funeral, from the factory at cost. And by law, there were some laws passed to protect the consumer, which is right there in 1984, and it says down there, casket, a funeral home cannot refuse a casket brought from an outside source or charge a handling fee. People don't know that you could actually go online yourself. I mean, this is a horrible thing to talk about, dying. But the reality is everybody's gonna die. So being prepared for that, that's the last thing you're gonna do in life.
That's
die.
That's right.
No one can't move on your land. You put a graveyard on the back of it. My dad thought about that, and he buried my grandpa.
Yeah. Well, some counties you can do that, some you can't. Indiana County, you can't do that. You know, out in a rural area, it's a little bit different. So a lot just depends on where you live.
That's the mile in the woods.
That's right. So it is important to, and when you're looking at life insurance, just because we've got on this situation, when you're struggling trying to go into school, well, it's hard to pay all this extra money to try to do that. But I try to encourage people when they're young to go ahead, when they start working, and go ahead and buy themselves a decent life insurance policy then while they're young and in good health. Instead of me getting calls from some lady who's 82 years old, and I go over to her house and she's had 3 heart attacks, she has no insurance, and it cost her an arm and a leg, just outrageous amount of money to buy it. Because they should have bought it when you're young, but when you're young, you don't think you're ever going to die. I mean, that's the last thing on your mind. But if you buy these things when you're young, you'll lock into them. It's very inexpensive. You'll be so glad down the road that you did it. You'll be happy, you know, because you say, I've got something here for my family. And in a lot of cases, these contracts they'll be paid up. You don't have to worry about paying on them anymore or whatever. So I encourage you, the minute you start working and get an income, to go out and purchase yourself a permanent life insurance policy that's going to be on that you'll have for the rest of your life. Don't get caught in that trap. A lot of us, and you know, even if it's buy a decent amount. Now, there's 2 kinds of insurance. There's permanent insurance. That's where you lock in on a premium that's there good for your rest of your life. And then there's term insurance. Term insurance is good for 10, 15, 20 years, and then it ends. Okay? It's very inexpensive up front. But the problem is when it ends 20 years down the road, then you're 20 years older. Your health might be bad, and it's going to cost you a whole lot more to purchase it. Now, it has its purpose. If I buy a house and I have a big mortgage and I have small children and I don't have a lot, I may want to buy some term to go along with that permanent to cover that mortgage. And when my children get grown and all that, and I build up some assets in my 401k and these types of things, I might not have as big a need for it, but I still bought some of that permanent up front that I'm going to have for the rest of my life, but the term served its purpose during that time period. You know, because I didn't have a lot of money to put out, but I had a lot of debts and I didn't have a lot of assets. So, you know, life insurance is the easiest way to transfer money at death. A lot of rich people buy as much life insurance as they can. Because it's tax-free, it's income tax-free at death. It can be considered in your estate for estate taxes, but what you do in that case is put it in a trust or gift it to your children and have it in their name to keep it outside of your estate. But rich people will always buy it because it's the easiest transfer of money at death. It's liquid, it's right there, boom. No income tax. So I would encourage you to do that. Something else I was thinking about. Another thing that I've learned is, is attitude. Attitude's the hardest thing we have to deal with in our lives. But it's everything. It's what makes you get up and do what you have to do every day. And setting the education goal requires having a right attitude and a right frame of mind. And setting that goal and say, I'm going to do it. Because there'll be days you say, why did I do this? Why am I doing this? This is killing me. But you have to have that right attitude in order to accomplish that. And there's kind of two rules I've learned in my life to live by that have helped me tremendously. And they're very simple rules. And I think if people would do these two things in their lives, it would make a tremendous difference. Number one is I live by the golden rule. To me, that's the most important thing I ever got out of religion. Treat people like you want to be treated. Think about what you do every day. Treat people like you want to be treated. Don't be so easy to fly off the handle. I used to be like that. I'd get mad at people fly off the handle, and it didn't get me anywhere. And my mom taught me that. It's one thing I learned from her. Let other people hang themselves. So treat people like you want to be treated. The second thing is, I don't care how bad my day is. And believe me, some days are horrible. I may go out and get stood up 2 times in a row, set an appointment with somebody, drive 50 miles and get there and there's nobody there. They didn't bother to call me or anything else. You have negativity happen to you all the time. But before I go to bed every night, I think of what happened that day. One good thing that happened that day. Even if my whole day was bad, I probably learned some lessons. But make yourself do that every day before you go to bed. Because we got so many things on us. Especially when you're trying to work, go to school, deal with family, and everything else. So having that positive mental attitude will get you through things that you don't think you'll be able to get through. So that's kind of what helps me to go forward every day. Because I know we're all bombarded constantly. Especially if you look at the news. Sometimes I think you're better off you don't look at the news anymore. Because all it is negativity. It's constant. So, I don't know if this means anything to anybody, but to me, I think it's an important thing that's helped me a lot. Does anybody have any questions on insurance at all, or what it might be like as a career, or, I'd be glad to try to answer that for you.
So what's the minimum you need to get?
Pardon?
What's the minimum insurance you advise people to take out?
Well, the minimum is what you can afford. In other words, a piece of pie is better than no pie at all. I tell people that a lot of times. You got to be able to fit it into your budget, which is another thing we learned through education is budgeting. I got this much money coming in and I got this much going out, and so many people don't even pay any attention to that. It's too easy to get in debt on credit card. Well, I'll go buy, I'll bet before they know it, they're up to here. So you've got to be realistic, and you've got to sit down and say, well, I'm going to put this much into a budget. Now, as far as insurance goes, if a person wants to make sure they had enough money to at least pay for their funeral if something happened to them, then you need, right now in North Carolina, it's $6,500 to $11,500 to bury somebody. If you open this thing up right here, that's what makes me sick. Is that right there? In 1970, a person buried themselves for $1,000. You have a traditional funeral for $1,000. Now, and look at it by 2010. That's the national average. So what do you see? The trend. The trend is up. And it's been up like that, so more likely it's going to continue to go up. You know, so a person ought to at least have enough money as far as that goes to make sure that the last thing they do is not putting a burden on somebody, their family.
So funny, like I said, we all gonna die, that's the reality. We get enrolled in your program. You're the only person that we really have to deal with, I mean, when the person dies. You're the only, your company's the only person, in other words, they take care of everything.
Well, in that instance, through the Funeral Consumer Guardian Society, which they're funeral advocates, and you could have insurance with other companies, and they'll still help through the whole process. It's just that to have a membership in this, you had to have insurance through Lincoln Heritage, this particular company, because they're the only people that offer that. So, I mean, there's other ways to go about doing it. If a lot of people who have a lot of money, they'll go and they'll have it all done at the funeral home, which costs a lot of money to do it that way, but they'll have it all pre-planned in advance that way. Or they already have they've got attorneys that's drawn up all these detailed plans. This is just a simple way for average American to have all that taken care of. That's what attracted me to this over just some of the other companies out, because I looked at all of them. This is not the only company I work with. I'm a broker, I'm self-employed, so depending on what market I'm working in, in this particular market, as far as just making sure that, hey, if I die, I want to make sure that my family's not left with a burden. I've got a plan in place, and I've got assistance for them to help them through the process. That's what this is about.
So someone enrolled in your program, and they kick the bucket next week, are they covered?
Yes.
Okay. I'm asking a question, nobody else asked a question.
Well, yeah, insurance in most cases is immediate. In other words, once that money's paid, that premium is received, that binds it. So I saw a case where one of my buddies sold a policy, and it was a $150,000 policy. He sold it that evening, and later that night the guy got killed on his motorcycle, and it paid immediately because it was bound. Now, if you're in really bad health, then you have to go with what they call a guaranteed issue type policy. That's why you want to get insurance while you're young and in good health, because then you have to wait 2 years for it to pay the full amount. And you'll see these advertised on television all the time. Colonial Penn, or you always have down there 2-year limited benefit. They don't ever tell you right out. And most of those, what happens is if you die the first 12 months, they'll pay you 110% or 120% of the premiums you paid in for the first 2 years, and then it pays the full amount. But you gotta wait 2 years for that to take place, and it's a whole lot more expensive. So that's why it's better to get it while you're young and in good health. Don't wait, because then you're caught short. And most people can't even afford enough then to meet what their obligations are. So.
Also, do you have, I know some insurance companies have where you take out a life insurance policy, but also you can pay also into a retirement plan.
Yeah.
I know one company that we have, and I thought that was really good. Could you give me some information on that, or?
Well, I mean, with life insurance, you have what they call traditional whole life policies, and they build cash value. Now, we live in a very low interest environment right now. The Federal Reserve has kept interest rates extremely low for a long period of time. It's killing senior citizens who have CDs. We actually call them certificates of depreciation, because inflation is growing quicker than a CD is. Okay, it's killing older people. You've got the stock market, but you got to be very careful there. You can make a lot of money in the stock market, but you can also lose a lot of money. And so many people's money is going in these 401ks, and nobody's really managing it for them. They don't know what they've got. Have absolutely no idea. They just look at their statement and hope it goes up and down. And I've seen people totally wiped out. I can take Corning, for example. their 401k, and a lot of those employees had heavy amount of it in corn and stock, and when corn and stock fell, they lost everything. So you gotta be very careful, you gotta ask questions about that. Now, insurance, I used to sell insurance on the idea of saving and accumulating money when I worked for Franklin Life. That was our whole concept. I call people up, I'm gonna come, I help my, I don't know if you know Joe and Sally, but I helped them with the idea about saving and accumulating money. They thought you might be interested in this idea, and they asked me to give you a call, and we'll be in your neighborhood Wednesday and Thursday of next week, and I'd set up an appointment. I come and I talk to them about how they need, I'd show them the story of an average, 100 average Americans, and what wound up, 3 out of 100 wound up well off. The rest of them wound up either dead or dead broke. And these are real statistics. So I got them in the habit of setting aside X amount of dollars a week into a life insurance policy. Well, there are better ways to save if you're educated enough to go out there and understand the market, the stock market, and have some money in there, or in some safety net type situation. You don't want all your money in the stock market. And you can use insurance to do that, but I don't really think life insurance is your best vehicle necessarily for saving money. And I'm an insurance agent, and I used to sell that concept. Yes, it was good because I got them in the habit of paying themselves first. You should pay yourself before you pay anybody else. You see that little commercial they got on TV now, I like with the orange money. You know, the girl said, well, you can't spend that. The guy's trying to sell them the grill. Well, it's got a sauce rack in it. No, I need to, because, you know, pay yourself first. That's the most important thing. I think permanent life insurance is a good thing to have, and today I try to market that where it's really not used as a way to accumulate money, but to try to keep the premium as low as I possibly can so that they'll have that insurance for the rest of their life guaranteed. So I wouldn't necessarily say that insurance is your absolute best way to accumulate money, even though it is a good way. It's better than a savings account. I mean, a savings account at the bank's paying 1/10 of 1% a year. 1/10 of 1%. It's ridiculous. It's all geared to, and I hate to say this, but it's geared to the wealthy, the marketplace is today. People who have a lot of money are making money on two things: capital gains and on dividends from their stocks, which they're only paying 15% interest. I mean, that's all they're paying, 15% tax on that. Where people who don't have this tremendous amount of money, especially older people with CDs and all, like I said, they're losing money. But it's geared in that the pendulum has swung in that direction. The wealthy have bought the politics, basically, is what's happening. And it's geared in that direction. All this money sitting overseas in these overseas accounts, you wouldn't believe it. It's just unbelievable. So that's why another good reason for education is understanding what's going on in our political system so that you can be a force in it. Not that I'm trying to get on my soapbox again, but I mean, I don't know if anybody in here is extremely wealthy. I might be stepping on their toes or whatever. So, yeah, I think that insurance is a good thing to have, but I wouldn't necessarily say that that's your best vehicle for accumulating money over the long term. Now, it is, the death benefits are good. I mean, because they're tax-free money. And I've seen some people that wound up pretty well off when they were the beneficiaries of some pretty big insurance policies. If I'm wealthy, that's another good way to pass on wealth. You know, but I'd encourage you, if you have 401ks, to take advantage of those, or Roth IRAs over the traditional. You don't get the tax break up front with a Roth, but you get all the money tax-free when you go to pull it out, which makes a big difference. We don't have pension plans anymore hardly unless you're in government, which is another thing about government that's neat to work for. You might not make as much, but you got a guaranteed pension. And people I've seen out there that are the best off are ones who have pension plans. People who work for the government. A lot of times I heard teachers, oh, they're not making anything or whatever. Oh, it's horrible, you know. But they're the ones that I've seen in retirement that are living better than anybody else because they got a guaranteed pension coming in, and they got health benefits coming in. But the political system's pretty much done away, and the corporate America has done away with pensions, and now they're putting it on you and 401ks and these types of things. So you need to be educated on those. You need to pay attention to where you're putting your money. Ask questions. You know, people like myself in the financial service industry can help you with those. I mean, I'm educated in those. I've had securities license. I've done a lot of an annuity business. And annuities are another good way you can save money. You know, tax deferred annuities, they're long term. You can get ones that are relatively safe, and then you've got ones that are in the stock market. And there again, it just depends on how much risk a person's willing to take. You have to understand risk and reward. You know, you can make, usually the higher the risk, the more money you can make, but you can also lose. So you got to be careful there. If I can afford to lose, that's one thing. You know, but if I can't, I want to be a little more conservative. And then the older you get, the more conservative you want to become because you have less time. When I'm young, if I'm in the market and it crashes, well, I've got time for it to build back up. But once I build that nest egg, I don't want to be risking losing that nest egg in a downturn like that. So I want to make sure that I've got a good majority of that money somewhere that's safe that I'm not going to have to worry about losing it. But there's professional people out there that can help you. If I'm going to build a house and I don't know anything about carpentry, I'm going to go try to hire the best carpenter or the best plumber or whatever. If I'm going to go to a doctor, I want to go to the best doctor. Well, it's the same with finances and insurance too, and everything in life. Don't be afraid to go to the people who that's their expertise to help you. You know, that's important.
There's one question I got there. My dad's been in computer business for 15 years. He's disabled, he barely works on it. He might get one once a month or something. But he puts his name out there, but he don't have the license. Well, even the licensed people that go to school for it even needs help from him, and he hasn't went to school for it.
Well, why doesn't he go to school?
That's, he ran off the bridge when he was young and messed him up, so his English skills are bad. We try to get him to go, but it's because we're poor and stuff. We can't just run all over the place. I'm running, my mom's going to school, and it's him going to school. He won't have time to make that 10 bit extra money coming in a week.
Well, I mean,
If he could go to school, I think he would make some big money because he knows a lot.
I mean, what kind of licenses does he have to have?
Like, I think computer license. You got to have
Regular business license, maybe a
Yeah,
sole
I'm not
proprietor.
sure that what kind of license he would need to have in order to work on the computer.
Sole proprietor. I mean,
When you say computer, because there's a lot of things with computer, you can just be computer maintenance, or you can be, for example, what?
You got to go to school and have your electrical wiring stuff license, cause it does with the electrical and stuff. So.
Have y'all looked on to see what's available online? No.
that's what we teach.
Yeah.
That might be another option.
Because you can, if there's certification, like you said, you can go maybe online and take some courses. And
Yeah.
you can just.
And I'm glad you brought that up because that made me think a little bit about something else. About the traditional going to classroom. We know so many things are becoming online. I was one of the pioneers to with Mount Olive. They were one of the first colleges to start that program, the online education. And it makes a lot of sense for people. I mean, you've got the ability to now, through computers and everything, to be in a classroom, a virtual classroom, without being there. And communicate through Skype and all this stuff with people, where you don't have to drive 50 miles back and forth and do all this. So you want to look more and more of taking advantage of it. And there's nothing better than us being together as human beings, communicating between each other. But that's not always easy to do. So that makes a lot of sense. Another thing that universities and colleges never bring up, I'm not trying to step on your toes here, there's things called Dante's and CLEP exams. Now, I was able to get quite a few courses through those. And I'd go get a CLEP book. I did one, I had to have a humanities course. That was 12 college credit hours. I didn't have time to sit through a humanities class. So I went and I got all these books on literature, architecture, and all these things, and I just kind of brushed through them real quick, and I got the CLEP book that kind of gives you some different topics. I studied it. I went to UNCW, went to the computer room, sat down, took the CLEP exam. You had to have a 70, depends on the university. Mount Olive, I think you had to have a 70. Some might require 75 as your final score. That is an A. An A. And it cost me about $60. Now you go and look at what it will cost you to take that course in the college and the time involved. So, and universities are not very big, or colleges, in letting people know this, because this is a business.
Education is a business.
It's a business, especially these privates. Believe me, Mount Olive will kill you in tuition. They'll kill you. I'm still paying it off. So, so look at those. Those are ways that you want to look for every way you can to try to accomplish getting to your goal. And online, CLEP, Dante's, go to your administrators and say, what do y'all accept? What do you have in CLEP courses that I can take? You'd be surprised the number of courses you can take and do it just like that.
Yeah, your dad, there's a class your dad can go to. I'm taking a class at Harvard right now. You can go there, your dad can go. There's an open course at MIT if he wants to go, since you already have those ideas. He can go in, there's a class he can go in at MIT and take it. It's for free. You just have to put your time in. And for example, my class I'm taking, we have over 800 people in my class, all over the world. Medical doctors, all around the world is in that class. So you can go in and you just have to dedicate your time to it. And once you finish the class, like you said, they have a grade level. You see everything. Once you get like 70%, that's like A. Then they will send you your certificate that you went through the course. And this is one of the top schools in the world.
Yeah.
So if you go to Harvard, you're competing with all the top brains in the world. Because my class, I mean, everybody's like medical doctor. Some of them, that's their field they're already in. So I'm competing with all those brains. Once you've done it, they send you your certificate, you have it. So your dad does it. If he knows that, if you finish, I can show you the site. I can give it to you. You can give to your dad. He can go in and sign in for a class there in computer engineering. He can take the course maybe 6 weeks, like a semester. And they do you like exactly in the same classroom. Only that all of you are all over the world taking a class. They put the work there, you do the work. If you don't do the work, it's self-paced. You at your own time, if you want to go in, you do it. Right now, when I finish, I have to go take an exam.
It gives you the flexibility.
It gives you the flexibility. It's up to you. Once you take it, your grades are shown there. It gives you all the trend, everybody in the class, you see. It gives you the entire, we have over 800 people in the course I'm taking. It gives everybody, it will give you the average of the entire class score. So once you finish, they have a stipulated time. At the end of that time, if you finish all the coursework, then you automatically will pass. Then they will send you your award, or they will mail it, or you can print it out. So if you want, I can show you that one. Your dad can go and register for MIT. There are courses there. You can go to Caltech, all the top universities in the world. they have those programs, and it's free of charge.
You're gonna
You
see
just
more
have-
and more of that.
The website there.
Yeah, I'll give it to you, yeah, and I'll show you how to go there. Your dad just needs to go there and sign it, and look the, whatever area he wants to go in, if it's information, maybe it might be information tech, you know, he can go in and sign in. Whenever the course is going to open, he can work at his own pace, he can be at home, do the work.
He's more a software person.
Well, they have a lot of those things there, because MIT is one of the best technology institutes in the world. You can compete with all the top brains in the world. Once he passes, they send him his certificate. And if he take that certificate anywhere, that you graduated from Harvard or MIT, you get job anywhere with it. Yeah, so I'll show it to you, because I'm in a class, I'm taking a class, I'm competing with all those people. So once you've done
I'll
that,
get a feel of your shoes.
I know it's 12 o'clock for me now, so I want to give him a hand for this great. He gave a great presentation, and I think that we all need to think about the inevitable, and maybe think more, because people can get very crazy on the death of someone. So this is a good resource person. I'm not trying to push his business, but he's a down-to-earth person. He laid it out there, so tell your families about it so you can start planning for the inevitable, because I'm going to talk to him myself.
yeah. So why is it that the insurance company, they always have a clause in their policies?
Do they always have clauses?
Yeah.
Yeah, they got all kinds of clauses.
You mean something that you, if you're not careful.
Yeah.
Well, the
This way you
biggest
gotta
thing
read.
is just be truthful.
Yeah.
I mean, all policies have 2-year contestable periods in them, where if I go, because to protect themselves from fraud. You know, I've had a heart attack, and I go and take an insurance policy and lie about having a heart attack, and then I die of a heart attack 6 weeks later. They're on the hook. You know, they've got to be able to make enough money to be able to pay these claims out. So there are clauses, but a good agent will explain these clauses too. Could be the suicide clause. You can take an insurance policy out, if you commit suicide in the first 2 years, it's not gonna pay. After 2 years, it will. I had a gentleman not far down the road commit suicide on a $240,000 policy, 6 weeks before he was 2 years old. Didn't pay. You know, so you gotta understand what in anything you deal with, you've got to take the due diligence to ask the questions. So many times, people don't ask questions. They're afraid to look stupid, or maybe they just don't know what to ask. And you are at the mercy a lot of times of people that you are talking to. You know.
All right.
Thank you so
much.
Outstanding.